nothing that would draw too much attention. In the meantime, they needed a main base, a citadel that could be both a sanctuary. But that was hardly practical. It was little more than a floating platform, the vacuum of space held back by a force field so it appeared that you were literally dining in the stars. It was impressive, but barely defensible. A place to inspire awe, but not to withstand the Jedi onslaught that was surely just a matter of time. The scab droids that had made stripping chips so much easier. Yes, the place was a garbage heap, but it was secure, and that was all that Lorna cared about. Like the Great Hall, no one would be able to find the planetoid without the paths. Of course, there were drawbacks. Lorna had never seen so much rain, lashing the weather-beaten walls of the complex day and night. Panada hated it and spent as little time here as possible. That suited her, although she would have liked to be able to keep track of her counterpart, especially after she joined Zetar in relocating her Tempest to the camp. Lorna didn't trust Zetar, but Lorna didn't trust anyone, so that was nothing unusual. However, he did enjoy Pan's face when, on a rare visit to Grazel, the Dawitan lumbered into the workspace she had converted to her quarters. He took one look at Zetar and drew back his lips into a snarl. Is this a joke? Do you see anything funny? Zetar snapped back. Lorna did, although she would never let either of them know, remaining as impassive and steely-eyed as possible. Pan swaggered up to Zetar, intent on staring straight into the Talpini's beady little eyes. Usually he would have loomed over Zetar, but things had changed. I see a little runt with something to prove, Pan growled. A little runt getting ideas above his station. Lorna had smiled when she had seen what Zetar had done prior Pan's arrival. The tiny Talpini had constructed a colossal power suit complete with pneumatic legs that put him head and shoulders over Anion on Grizal. Zeke himself was perched in the protective cage that made you the mech's broad chest, the imposing setup completed by flame rifles, the low lifter's droid arms, and grenade launchers mounted above H head. Now, for the first time, Zetar was leering down at Pan. Strange, Zeke sneered, his thin yoif. Yeah? Pan replied, holding his ground as Zetar clumped forward in an attempt to make Pan step back. Why don't you jump out of that rig and we'll see just how equal we are? Zetar pursed his lips and cocked his large head. Ah, are you feeling threatened? Poor little Dow Dow. Pan swung in hard from the right, only for his massive fist to be caught easily in the power suit's steel grip. Zetar squeezed his own hand, his suit mirroring the action thanks to the sensor that snaked from the control gloves he wore over his stubby hands. There was a sickening crunch of bone and a grunt from Pan, the Dowatin's free hand immediately going, with the blaster hanging from his belt. Up. Enough. Neither Tempest Runner looked at Lorna, but the effect of her voice was instantaneous. The pair froze, glaring into each other's faces. Zetar, release him. Pan, back off. Now Pan's head snapped around to face her. Who died and made you I? Who made you stupid? Her gaze turned to Zetar. Both of you, squabbling like new recruits. We are supposed to direct the storm, especially in Ro's absence. Zetar was the first to back down, releasing Pan's fist. You were right, of course. That was foolish of me. I apologize. Damn right it was foolish, Pan snapped, rubbing his bruised knuckles. And don't think we can't see through your stupid apology. Zetar spread his mech's arms, a smirk on his round face. Just trying to be the bigger man. Pan snarled, taking a step forward, but Lorna stepped into his path before he could resume the fight. Do I have to stop you myself? In hot against her face. Lorna didn't. Silk shirt, maybe even a well-directed knee to the groin if she really wanted to humiliate the big oaf. In the end, all she had to do was remain obstinate. Pan's eyes flicked between Zetar and Lorna before he finally relented with a snort, turning his broad back to her, proof of how much he trusted her. The ignorant fool. How easy would it be to blast a hole between those broad shoulders? What's this about? He grunted, trying to take control of a situation that had rapidly accelerated out of his control. Why did you call me back to this stinking hole? What do you think? Zetar asked. You messed up, Pan. You messed up badly. Pan wheeled around angrily. What did you say? He's talking about Cycler, Pan, Lorna added, the Dawson's face darkening at the planet's name. What about it? Zetar made a play of scratching his neck beard, the mech suit copying the motion like a deranged puppet. Oh, let me see. An entire cloud lost. The sector put on alert. Messages back and forth between the Jedi and the Senate. Tell me, Pan, should we call in the idiot responsible for the attack? What was his name? Sarn Starbungler, Starbreaker. Zetar snapped his fingers. Of course, that's it. Oh, but we can't, can we? Because now he's Stardust. That's why we called, because if the idiot in question is dead, why not go straight to the moron you hear? Beat the top. Pan made to lurch forward, but this time Lorna put a firm hand on his chest. He stopped, nostrils flaring. It wasn't Starbreaker's fault. There were Jedi at the shipyards. There are always Jedi, Zetar countered. What, Pan? Rose specifically said. Forward, a thick finger jabbing at Zetar's face. Me and Lorna, we've been here since the beginning, more or less. You? You're nothing more than a jumped up grease jockey. Maybe I should grant you some slack, because you obviously don't know how things work around here. But to be honest, I am fed up with the druck that flows from that mouth of yours. We ain't the Republic, Zetar, and we sure as hell ain't the Jedi. We do what we want when we want, no matter what anyone says, Ro included. We ride the storm that we create, our tempests, our strikes. Yeah, we owe him for the paths, but this is bigger than him now. And if he doesn't like it, he should step aside, whatever his spineless lackeys bleed. Spineless lackeys like you. Is that right? Lorna's words had stopped the fight, but hadn't diffused the situation. Those 3 words, spoken from across the chamber, killed everything dead. All 3 Tempest runners turned to see the figure standing in the doorway, taking in the long cape, the heavy mask. Ro, Pan grunted, a simple acknowledgement, no attempt to cover what he had been saying, no attempt to backtrack. Pan, Ro returned, stepping coolly into the room, the door swishing closed behind him. It is good to see you on Grizel. The eye reached for his mask as he walked, seals hissing as they released. He pulled it from his head in an easy movement, revealing his smooth gray skin and those unnerving eyes that seemed to bore into your soul. Lorna noticed that he had let a light beard grow on his cheeks. That was new, although the look in his eyes was old. This app, you've upgraded. Most impressive, wouldn't you say, Pan? He didn't turn to face the Dowden when he spoke. Yeah, Pan grumbled. It's great. Your mission? Lorna asked, not to change the subject, but only to prolong Pan's humiliation. Was it a success? Beyond anything I could have wished for. And Udi Diz? Did he serve you well? He didn't answer, searching her face for a moment before stepping away from the 3 Tempest runners, his leather cloak billowing. How have things been going here? The work on the path jumpers? Proceeding as planned, Zeta replied eagerly. We need a field test, but that will come, Ro promised, turning to Lorna. And the other cells? Lying low, as per your instructions. He stopped, seemingly studying the star map Lauren had mounted along the far wall. Ah, yes, my instructions. Tell me, Pan, have you been following my instructions? Because we had a firm strategy, didn't we? A plan that everyone bought into. Zetar, Lorna, you. No major strikes for the foreseeable future. Nothing that would draw attention to us. Nothing that will prompt a reaction. You abided by that, didn't you, Pan? You kept your end of the bargain? Pan took a step forward, glaring at the eyes back. Ro, listen. We need to talk. There needs to be. A control on his was that their hands, flowing. And, you're right, of course. There does have to be change. Change to the lies that spew from that mouth of yours. Why? Pan was staring up at him, eyes wide with pain. Somehow, Incredible Doughton managed to hiss through clenched teeth. Stop! This urgy stop? Like you stopped the raids? Ro didn't shout. He didn't have to. His voice was low and dangerous above the crackle of searing end. Did you think I wouldn't know? That I wouldn't hear? You attacked a major shipyard in the mid-rim. And for what? A destroyed cloud ship and over 60 Nihil dead. No one escaped your Tempest raid. No one. It achieved nothing except placing the Republic on high alert. After everything we have been working toward. Everything. Have been working toward. You risked it all because you were impatient. Because you cannot see beyond your own greed. He bent down, staring into Pan's pained eyes. I knew sparing you was a mistake. Kasav would have obeyed orders. Kasav would have done what he was told. You should have been the sacrifice, not him. Lorna half expected Ro to spit on the Dawood, to hear the saliva hiss as it rolled down Pan's electrified cheek. She could smell the tempest, Runner's flesh cooking as the energy raged, every muscle bunched beneath his armor. But Ro swept from the room, not even looking back, leaving Pan to literally fry in his own juices. Lorna and Zetar exchanged confused glances. Were they supposed to follow or to help their counterpart as he shuddered helplessly at their feet? For the first time in months, Lorna didn't know what to do. She had pledged to follow Ro without question, to obey his commands to the letter. But this? Passive had been a tactical decision, but this was just a fit up. She looked up at Zetar. Pull it from his hands. The Talpini did the energy move, but won't harm your power suit. You don't know that he could die. Sounds like Ro wants him dead. Yeah, in a strained voice. And how long before it's your turn? They both looked down. It was Pan, his face taut, bloodshot eyeballs looking as though they were about to start steaming, but he wasn't dead yet. Pan let out a bestial growl, his clawed fingers digging deeper into the helmet. Metal crunched and sparks flew. Lorna jumped back up as impossibly, unbelievably. Pan crumpled Ro's helmet as if it were a tin can. Not so helpless after all. With one last gigantic effort, the Dawotin ripped the helm in two. The lightning ceased, releasing Pan from its grip. The Tempest Runner breathed out, his muscles shuddering one last time. Lorna moved to help him to his feet. The hulking alien turned his head so fast she thought he was about to sink his teeth into her fingers. Don't touch me. I wanted to help you. I doubt it was for my benefit. He took a step back, allowing him to rise painfully to his feet, the two halves of the smashed helmet still in his hands. Steam was rising from his parched skin, burned raw across his wide forehead and cheeks. He swayed slightly on his feet, and to her surprise, this time Zetar moved, shooting out a mechanical pincer to grab the giant's shoulder, stopping him from slumping to the ground. Pan licked his cracked lips. What do you think? Zetar looked at Lorna. She sighed. Sav's death was a tactical choice. Her silence gave him the answer. Zetar's eyes searched both their faces. But Kasav's entire tempest. Everyone died, Lorna. To protect the storm, to protect Ro and you. You? The Dawotan took a step towards Zetar, but this time there was no challenge, no bravado. For the first time since Zetar had been elevated, Pan was looking at the Talpini as an equal. You can't blame her. He glanced back at Lorna. I don't, because it's not about us. It's about him. We do the work. We risk our lives and the lives of our tempests, and he reaps the rewards. The entire storm reaps the rewards, Zetar replied, although the words had no conviction. Really? You know the way it works. Yes, the spoils get spread around, but most work their way up. To us, Lorna reminded him. And to Ro. And for what? What does he actually do? He provides the paths, does he? Dropping the remains of Ro's helmet, Pan reached into his armor jacket, pulling out a hull projector. I hope this still works, he grunted, fumbling with the controls, his fingers obviously still stiff from his ordeal. Let me, Lauren said. holding out a hand. Pan handed it over, looking her straight in the eye. You sure you want to see? The Talotai's eyes were wide, frenzied, the pupils reduced to pinpricks. Lorna looked back up at her counterpart. He looks as high as a kitchawk, Pan said. I thought he was straightened out. He was, Pan admitted. But once an addict, always an addict, especially when a free sample finds its way to his hand. Zetar's eyes narrowed. Let me guess. One of your strikes took out a redux shipment? Lorna shook her head, everything suddenly making sense. The Reek-Riders just play it, Pan rumbled. He clicked a button and the image came to life. The sound from the projector tinny but clear. You're just jealous, Udidus crowed, his voice shrill, a known side effect of the merchandise he'd been foolish enough to sample. You hate the fact that Ro chose me. And why would I be jealous of that? Pan's voice now. Lorna looked closer and could see a hint of his reflection in Dis's glassy eyes. Because I've got to go where you haven't. Dis gestured wildly behind him, his feathered arm sweeping up to point at something off cam. The gaze electric. I have seen things you will never see. I know Ro's secrets, everything about him. Pan uttered a sharp, mocking laugh on the recording. Rubbish. Why would Ro share anything with trash like you? Because he trusts me. Pities you more like, yeah? Then how can I know where the paths don't? I've seen her. Her? Lorna's question echoed Pan's own, in her head. She just thinks them up, sees the universe as it is. She's brilliant, and she's his. Pan reached over and took the projector from Lorna's hand, cutting off the image. Lorna let him, staring at the space where Dis's hollow had been. A woman? Zetar asked, posing the question that was on Lorna's lips. What kind of woman? Pan slipped the device back into his jacket. An old one. You heard it yourself. Can we trust him? Lorna asked. He was addled out of his mind and didn't come back from Ro's mission, Zetar added. Yeah, Pan said. Funny that. The thing is, why would he lie? Ro won't let us see his precious database. Maybe that's why. Maybe he doesn't want us to know that his entire empire is built on the brain of one ancient crone. He looked at them both, examining their faces. But think about it. This woman, whoever she is, provides the paths and Ro merely throws them our way, scraps from his table. But what if we had the entire meal? What if we could gorge ourselves silly? Lorna's mouth was dry. This moment had been coming for a long time. Pan had been strutting around like an Alderanian peacock for months, and now she knew why. What other intel had he gathered? One thing was certain. Whatever Pan was planning, they weren't Katie, not for this. The Daotan snatched up the remains of Ro's helmet and stalked toward the door. Where are you going? She called after him, although answer was obvious. Pan stopped at the door and looked over his shoulder. To finish what Ro started. It's time we took what is ours. What do you say? Chapter 16. Lonisa City Zoo, Valo. Elzar stared at the Phagscythe, and the Phagscythe stared back. 3 sets of eyes to man's one. The creature wanted to kill him. Of that, there was no doubt. There was nothing malevolent about the desire. Phagscythes skilled, that was just what they did, hunting through the Onderon jungles, ready to tear their prey to messy, red pieces. One of the deadliest predators in the Japriel system. One of the deadliest predators in the galaxy, full stop. 6 eyes, 18 claws, 3 heads, and more teeth than a pack of Nexus. A natural-born killer to be treated with respect. And yet, in just one day, this magnificent beast would be gawped at by thousands of festival goers. There would be younglings pulling faces and tourists taking image scans, parents posing their children in front of the monster safe, in the knowledge that the ravenous beast was behind modulating containment fields. No wonder the Phagscythe was glaring. You were trapped in an enclosure, no matter how be. Void's teeth you would thrash and flail and apart by pure force of will. Elzar ran a finger along his collar, the Paxite's keen eyes following the movement. The morning was already unbearably hot, the sun beating down, unseasonably warm even for a Valon summer from what he could gather. He had meant to walk to the lake before the Chancellor's transport touched down, to let the presence of so much water cool him. Maybe he'd even stand near the antigrav fountains that had been activated 2 days previously in the Arts and Culture Zone, the work of a famed water sculptor whose name had escaped him for the moment. Instead, man found himself here in Lonisa City Zoo, strolling the exhibits. Elzar corrected himself. Not exhibits. Living Creomonctures plucked from their natural environments and dumped here. He was being uncharitable, of course. The zoo would do great work long after the Republic Fair had closed its doors, conducting valuable conservation and breeding work made possible by a generous grant from the Fair Committee that had completely renovated the once tired collection that had stood here for generations. Everywhere he looked, Elzar saw new enclosures and educational booths, ready to inform and entertain while also pointing guests to the nearest refreshment stalls. It was amazing how quickly the work had been completed. Construction droids and Bombrats still putting the finishing touches on the various paddocks. One of the bat-eared Bombrax, Valo's other sentient life form, tiny and more than a little foul-mouthed, had tried to stop him from entering zoo grounds, chirping at him that they weren't and to come back later. A quick nudge in the right direction ensured that the Bombrak had gone about his business, instantly forgetting that he'd seen a Jedi in the first place. Elzar could just imagine what Stellan's reaction would be. The fledgling council member was always squeamish when it came to influencing another being's thought patopin. Captain Scott. Presence. He would simply say that he was sweeping the area for threats. He closed his eyes and reached out with the force to make the lie a truth. All was well. The zoo was safe. If you ignored the fact that of its inhabitants could gore, slash, or chew you to death given chance. Most half the. When he opened his eyes, the Pygsaith had melted back into foliage that hid it from view. Yeah, you stay in there, Eldar thought. It would serve all those gawpers right. Let them peer through their image lenses and complain to the keeper droids that you were nowhere to be seen. You look after yourself. The comlink built into his puff chirped. Elzar sighed as he brought his arm up to his mouth, spotting the time on the chrono next to the communications device. He was already late. Jedi man? Samara's voice was clipped, professional, and there was no mistaking the use of his title. Maybe she had people with her, maybe not. Elzar had already turned and was striding toward the nearest exit. I'm on my way. Understood. The comm cut off. Yeah, Elzar understood too. The message had been received loud and clear. The Chancellor's shuttle was already touching down as Elzar pulled into the landing bay on the speeder bike he had picked up from the temple. He hopped off the saddle and resisted the urge to jog over to join Samara and the welcoming committee. The coordinator turned to acknowledge presence without even one word of greeting as his place. At any other time such a lofty position. Elzar had spent most of his dealings with Snap fighting the urge not to plunge his lightsaber through his own hand. He had never met someone so convinced of his own importance and yet so incapable of doing his job. Elzar had no idea how the captain had risen to his ridiculously high rank, but at least he seemed to have the sense to surround himself with VSF agents who actually knew what they were doing. Elzar knew Samara felt the same way about Snap. Samara, whose long neck was still far too diverting. Thankfully, the whine of the Chancellor's boarding ramp banished most, if not all, thoughts that were unworthy of a Jedi. Elzar adjusted his robes as all eyes turned to the open hatch. Chancellor Lena So did not disappoint as she emerged from the shuttle wearing a gown shimmering silver, her ever-present Targons padding down the ramp at her side. Chancellor, welcome to Valo. The greeting was given by Lonisa City's mayor, a pleasant Valon by the name of Naz Larian. We have been looking forward to this visit for many cycles. As have I, so said, bowing in the traditional Valen manner. May I introduce my son, Itrip? She turned to usher in an awkward looking boy, whom Elzar would out at about 17 standard years. Tall and rake thin, the lad was wearing a loose hooded jacket and dipped his head stiffly in greeting, long curtains of black hair falling in front of his face, obscuring, Elzar noticed, green eyes that kept flicking over to Mayor Larian. No, that wasn't right. He wasn't glancing at Larian, but at the mayor's son, a handsome looking boy called Jom. So was introduced to everyone in turn, the Chancellor taking particular care to acknowledge Samara and Elzar himself before an introduc, the rest of her party, her deputy, her aide, and of course, her Jedi escort. Stellan immediately caught Elzar's eye, and man allowed him. Cam Droid's lens focused on him, feeling solidarity with the Ragside back at the zoo. Thankfully, the spherical droid soon swept along the line, leaving him be. The formalities concluded, Samara led the Chancellor to the row of gleaming aircars waiting at a discreet distance. The driver droids ready to whisk So to the Republic Embassy for the first of many briefings that had been scheduled before the opening ceremony. Elzar held back as the committee followed the Chancellor, falling in beside Stellan and the other Jedi. Stellan, of course, looked resplendent in full temple attire, the stole over his shoulders identifying him as a recently elevated member of the High Council, a temporary addition to his robes that Stellan would be glad to leave behind once the appropriate period of time had passed. Stellan spotted Elzar glancing down at the fabric's embroidery, a smirk on his face. I didn't say a word. You didn't have to. It's very impressive, Elzar said, pursing his lips. You wear it well. Stellan looked pointedly at Elzar's own vestments. And your temple robes are where they belong. In the temple, Stellan shook his head. I'm surprised you brought them. I tried to forget, Elzar admitted, but my attendant droid helpfully stowed them in my vector. How much did you yell at the poor thing? Enough to rupture its audio receptors. Stellan laughed, knowing all too well how much Elzar hated his golden whites and would find every excuse not to wear them if he had a choice, in the same way that Elzar knew that Stellan couldn't stand seafood or dancing at state functions. The latter had always surprised Elzar. After all, Stellan never seemed to mind being in the lime. It was good to see him, though. Elzar could already feel his mood lifting, even though Stellan's blue eyes were now fixed attentively on him. What is it? You look good. You sound surprised. I've just been worried about you. The last time we spoke, the last time they'd spoken, Elzar had still been troubled by his vision of the future, a vision he was now convinced he had averted by his presence on Valo. Elzar shrugged, trying to make light of things as usual. What can I say? Valo agreed with me. Who would have known? The Force. Elzar fought the urge to roll his eyes. That was peak Stellan right there. Well, yes. Naturally. Well, I'm glad to see you so relaxed. How's it been? Preparations? Remarkably straightforward, thanks in no small part to Samara. Coordinator Raun? Elzar cursed himself for his slip. The last thing he wanted Stellan to think was that he was getting overfamiliar. She's quite extraordinary, he said quickly. Nothing seems to faze her. She takes everything in her stride and sees solutions when others see problems. Sounds like you think we should recruit her. Elzar chuckled. I think she's a little too old to start training. Besides, I don't think she's particularly force sensitive, just talented. There's no just about it. Elzar felt rather than heard the sadness in his friend's words. Stell? She is with me all the time, in the force. Stellan nodded, not to mention on your belt. Stellan's hand went instantly to the long silver lightsaber hilt he obviously thought Elzar hadn't noticed, tucked away beneath his robe. Shouldn't that be in the repository? Elzar asked. It will be, Stellan told him, subconsciously pulling his cloak around him so the light couldn't glint off his late master's lightsaber. When I have learned everything she has to teach me, Elzar's eyebrows rose in mock surprise. You mean the great Stellan Geos doesn't already know everything? He felt a little shove from the force, the equivalent of a nudge in the ribs, a light-hearted reminder to behave that Stellan had employed since they were younglings. He raised his hands in surrender. I'm just saying, you're always just saying something. Stellan felt quiet, and they walked in silence for a moment before Elzar asked, Did you feel it? When she passed? Stellan took a moment before completing his answer. I knew long before the call came from Coruscant, followed by your call to the council there, at your elevation. You had your duties. That was true enough, Elzar thought, thinking of the waves Ashla. Besides, Stellan continued, Alvar was there. She did. She was there when I found Rana's. Vern. Stellan smiled again at the mention of his former Padawan. Vernethra Woe, Jedi Knight. She's going to do great things, that one. A chip off the old block. Less of the old. Well, if you refuse to dye that beard of yours. They had reached the transports, the party coming to a stop. Elzar shifted uncomfortably when he realized that Stellan's eyes were on Samara. Maybe he hadn't fielded his feelings about her as well as he thought. No, not feelings. That was overstating things. Friendship, fondness. Either way, he would have to be careful now that Stellan was here. So, what was it Rana used to say? He asked, trying to distract his old friend. About talents. That did the trick. Stellan was back in teacher mode, his happy place. Oh, only that the talents of others are a reminder of our place in the universe. Here we are with our gift and abilities, and then there are folk like your coordinator over there. He's not my anything. Elzar cut in a little too quickly. You know what I mean. Elzar had a horrible feeling. Samara Ra'un, with no particular connection to the Force, and yet as able as any Jedi, all without a helping hand from the galaxy at large. It's humbling, not to mention a little patronizing, Elzar thought, but he let it slide. Besides, the retinue was now clambering into the air cars. Shall we? Stellan asked, stepping aside so Nib and Burryaga could air car before climbing into a seat himself. That's from Starlight, he said, not bothering to disguise the excitement in his voice as he started, back toward the landing pad. Elzar, wait. I'll catch up, Elzar called over his shoulder as the air cars started sliding away. Stellan would give him merry hell about this later, but he couldn't let the moment pass. Starlight meant Avar, and Elzar needed to make sure she was greeted in style. It was a little odd that the Chancellor's retinue was already speeding away without the hero of Hetzel, but time and Samara's schedule waited for no one, even the marshal of the beacon. And yet, when the shuttle touched down, it wasn't Abar Chris who gracefully stepped through the hatch, but a short figure, wearing a bulbous helmet above his mission robes. Elzar had only met Starlight's archivist at the dedication ceremony, but the Ugor had made a distinct impression, mainly the ability to bore the wings off a Drethi. Elzar had only made it through their conversation by imagining what Orbalin looked like beneath his containment suit. Few people had seen Ugors in their natural form, which Elzar believed resembled a cytoplasmic blob, their suits manipulated by wriggling pseudopodia that also facilitated the creature's senses. Orbalin was the only Ugor to be accepted into the order, a fact that the archivist had mentioned at least 7 times during their brief encounter. Orbalin shook his helmet. She isn't coming. She cannot. The Drengir threat. I have come in her place. Elzar's mood darkened, and for the first time in months he felt the shadows of his vision return. Avar wasn't coming. He had been so looking forward to spending time with her again, to hearing her voice, her laugh, without the hiss of a hollow projector. No wonder Stellan had told him not to wait. He'd known she wasn't on the shuttle, the sanctimonious puff bag. Well, Orbalin said, we have plenty to transport to the pavilion if we're going to set up in time. Elzar didn't try to hide his sigh. Fine. Show me what needs doing. Or Berlin produced a datapad, excitedly scrolling through an itinerary while Elzar stewed. This was just typical. However keenly he felt his disappointment, Avar's absence also highlighted how far apart they had drifted. He glanced up at the sky, spotting a single star among the blue. If he was out there right now, keeping the frontier safe, while he was here on Valo, shifting ancient trinkets from the back of a Transdamar if he could, be leading Jedi into battle for all he knew, while he would be gawked at by diplomats and tourists. Port, like a fag scythe in a cage. Chapter 17, Republic Avenue, Valo. Stellan was worried. His friend Elzar had always been a man of deep feelings, but like all Jedi, he strove to keep them in check. Yes, he was at times unconventional, but he was never unstable. Now his frustration was palpable. Stellan had felt the surge of emotion the moment Elzar had stalked into the reception hall after helping Orbelin. It wasn't difficult to guess the reason. Avar wasn't coming. Perhaps he should have warned him the moment Avar had decided to stay on Starlight, but he had no idea that Elzar would respond so fiercely. The look that he shot Stellan when their eyes had met across the room. Thank the Force, Elzar got himself under control when the Togruta ambassador had hurried up, eager to speak to him. Star Wars, The Rising Storm. Republic. And Stellan could see glimpses of the attractions beyond, the various pavilions organized into four distinct zones: technology and science, sport and adventure, arts and culture, and finally faith and life, where the Starlight Pavilion was to be found. As they walked, coordinator Samira Ra'un was pointing out highlights, such as the impressive hoverball stadium or the lookout tower. But Stellan couldn't concentrate. Instead, he was focused on Elzar, wondering what was going on beneath his friend's forced smile. Perhaps he could join Elzar and Ambassador Tis. The last thing they needed was a diplomatic incident between the Jedi and the Togrutas. Some days it seemed that the respect that the Togrutas shared for the Order was the only thing that was stopping them from openly declaring hostilities against the Republic. The fact that the Togrutas were even here was a miracle and testament to Chancellor So's diplomacy. If Elzar said the wrong thing, Master Gios, are you all right? You seem distracted. It was Nib breaking off from a conversation with Orbelin to check on him. I'm Jedi Asek, he began. I just need to. Sorry. He's about to make his excuses when Samara Ra'un's confident voice interrupted him. The party had finally reached the edge of the harbor, the majesty of Lake Lonisa stretching out toward the horizon. My friends, he said, smiling proudly, here we find ourselves beneath the crowning glory of the Republic Fair experience, the sky's lens. She looked up, directing everyone's gaze toward the magnificent repulsor platforms. Some were no larger than a shock ball pitch, but the fur of their hoverpods noticeable, although representing a key member of the Republic. Here, visitors will be able to experience everything the Republic has to offer, from the golden beaches of Spira and island spires of Bestine, to the bustling markets of Jaresh and fashion emporiums of Alderaan. How will visitors travel from one to another? Larepres asked. An excellent question. Guests will be transported in unique repulsor pods decorated with designs appropriate to the native system of the planets themselves. Pods, incidentally, that will be available to buy in miniature from every gift stall and toy shop within the park. Stellan smiled politely as a chuckle rippled through the party, using the opportunity to glance at Elzar. His friend was sharing a private joke with Tis, the ambassador obviously enjoying the moment. Elzar seemed to have relaxed. Perhaps Stellan should do the same. You worry too much, a voice seemed to say in the back of his head, Avar's voice, an echo from years ago when he had first brought up Elzar's black moods. Elzar knows what he is doing. He's a good Jedi, Stellan. And besides, even if he wasn't, he's got you to watch out for him. Avar was right. Avar was always right. No one was free of frustration, not even legends like Grandmaster Veeder. Stellan had realized that soon enough in his first council session, but like Veter, Elzar could control his grievances. All would be well. We were hoping we would be able to give you a sneak peek of just a couple of the pavilions, starting with lunch on the Hetzel platform. The grilled Vando fruit in particular is to die for, especially after a long journey. Excellent idea, said a heavily accented voice. Am I too late to join you all for lunch? Everyone turned to see a jowl-faced hurrying toward. Senator Toon, Reza said in a tone that could freeze lava, how marvelous it is to see you again. And you, my friends, Toon replied, acknowledging the rest of the group, bowing his head particularly towards Stellan. Council member. Stellan returned the gesture, turning on his most diplomatic smile. The Sullustan turned to the Chancellor, bowing extravagantly. Madam Chancellor. Cole and Reza were forced to step aside as So approached the newcomer, her targons patting with her. She extended a hand, which the senator took with good grace. Senator, we weren't expecting you so soon. I arrived earlier today. I have a number of meetings to attend before the festivities begin. One of the benefits of the fair, so many visiting dignitaries. Perfect for business. Business of the Senate or the Sorosub Corporation? Reza asked with ill-disguised venom. Toon didn't seem ruffled by the vice chancellor's tone. Both, he admitted pleasantly. I am here to represent my people and the Republic, and this is, Quo inquired, giving the Orzrelanso the most damning of side-eyed glances. My personal secretary, Ratko. Quo didn't pretend to hide his incredulity. Your secretary? Isn't he a little big? The Solistan looked shocked. Big? Whatever are you suggesting, Norel? Obvious to them all. Rotko had security guard written all. We have repulsor pods waiting for us all. The coordinator turned, indicating a number of hover buggies, similar in design to the pods used by representatives in the Senate chamber on Coruscant, although each of these was staffed by a discrete pilot droid built into the chassis itself. Those Vando wraps won't eat themselves. Reza tried his best to guide Lena So away from Tiatun, but the Solistan wouldn't take the hint, attaching himself to the Chancellor like a Minoc to a fuel line. Reza glanced up, finding Stellan's eye. The implication was clear. Stay close. Surely Reza didn't consider Tune a threat, physical or otherwise. There was the Orzrelanso, of course, with his long prehensile lobes and ridged forehead, but Stellan could sense no malice from the giant, intimidating as he was. Nonetheless, Stellan maneuvered himself so he joined the Chancellor in her pod. Behind him, Elzar was already leading the Togruta ambassador to the second pod, along with Nib and the other Jedi, all of whom had read the situation perfectly. Real Gyro joined the remaining dignitaries and officials in the third and final pod, although her cam droid still hovered above them all, taking footage from all angles. Stellan reached out with the Force, noting that Elzar was doing the same, ascertaining if there was any real danger. Their eyes met, and Elzar nodded subtly, obviously having come to the same conclusion. Toon was an irritant, nothing more. The heightened anxiety in the group due to the worry that he would turn what should be a pleasant lunch into another opportunity pushed his DFB agenda. Delegates' chatter shifting from pleasantries to wonder as the full beauty of the park became apparent from the air, which she had on the ground. Samara pointed out key buildings while they rose, from the awe-inspiring Starlight Pavilion housing treasures from the archives on Coruscant, Deveron, and the beacon itself to the fair's spectacular main gates. Like the Sky Islands, what had been dubbed the Unity Arc was a marvel of repulsor technology. 22 floating spheres, one for each of the Republic's core founders, forming a majestic arc. But Stellan's eye was drawn to the city beyond the gates. Lonisa was already teeming with the thousands of visitors who had arrived early for tomorrow's opening ceremony. He had never been here before, but knew the work that had gone into the city, from the construction of the new spaceport to the east to Valo's own Jedi Temple, currently in the finishing stages of being rebuilt from its more modest predecessor, like of the outposts across the frontier. All of life was here on the very edge of Republic space, testament to the rapid expansion of the last few centuries. While Ranakant would have been the first to remind him that a Jedi thought only of the present, Stellan saw nothing wrong in acknowledging the promise of a bright future. It gave hope, and hope fueled the Force. Many. Ahead of him, Larep Reza shook his head in wonder. You said we'd do it, he told the Chancellor. And you were right. The Republic can do anything. So said proudly, absently ruffling Matari's crimson head. Together we are strong, as I hope the Togrutas will come to believe. Ambassador Tis acknowledged the comment with a slight bow. The fair is an amazing achievement, Madam Chancellor. I am sure the Regassa will be most. Seizing on the Yes, a fortune in galactic credits can do anything. The site is truly impressive, Madam Chancellor, as I always knew it would be. After all, when you spend that much money, anything less would be, shall we say, disappointing. The fair will bring much investment to Valo and the surrounding systems, Samara cut in. In fact, it already is. Transport, passage, tourism, increased security, numerous grants, Toon said, picking up the litany. Do you not feel the credits are well spent? Ambassador Tis asked, regarding the Sullustan with eyes the color of a burnt sunset. Oh, they will bring much pleasure to those lucky few who make it here. Toon looked up at the approaching island. More than a few, So said calmly, although Stellan could feel the frustration roiling in her belly. We expect thousands to pass through those gates every day. Thousands compared with the trillions who make up the Republic as a whole. While others, who cannot make the journey, will be able to watch from their home, So continued, indicating the cam droid hovering just above them, recording every moment of the conversation, although Stellan doubted any of this would. Riva's face had darkened. A flush, hardly think now at the time, and when would have, and continued without pause or consideration, because we already have the Republic Defense Coalition, which is haphazard at best and absent at worst. Toon raised his hands to signal a pause in the conversation and turned to the Togura ambassador with well-practiced sympathy written all over his face. I apologize for any embarrassment this conversation may bring, Your Excellency, but I admit to having my doubts about this venture, doubts I hope and pray will be proved wrong. The fair, I am sure, will be a marvelous success. Now he acknowledged Samara, who was obviously trying hard not to shatter the datapad clutched tightly in her hands. And I am also sure that Valo will benefit from the fame and investment, but I cannot help but wonder if, considering the current climate on the frontier, the money could not have been better used to shore up our defenses against the growing Nihil threat. The slightest irritation had crept into So's voice when she responded. As the Senate has been informed and has accepted on numerous occasions, our security budget has not been affected by the fair. It has not been increased, nor does it need to be. The Nihil situation is being contained, and the Drengir, again, the situation is under control. The Jedi are already working with Republic authorities to stop the spread of the Drengir across the sector. That's not all they are working with, of course, Toon said, not letting the Chancellor reply before turning the conversation back to the ambassador. Have the Togruta suffered much at the Nihil's hands, Your Excellency? The Outer Rim, Toon offered quickly, keen to keep in control of the conversation, although of course for you, it has always been your own territory. The Caramandary Tis provided the center. The Caramandary, yes, Toon repeated, savoring the word. Yours is such a beautiful language, and one I hope to learn more of as our great cultures work together. I am looking forward to meeting Her Majesty. If I am permitted to join the reception, of course, the Chancellor cut in. As a valued member of the Sen, 8, you are always welcome, both at the reception and here now. She looked up as the pod docked at their destination, the doors sliding silently open to let them disembark. We have arrived. Indeed we have, Madam Chancellor, Samara said, pitching her voice up so the other groups could hear. Welcome to Hetzal. Senator, if you would like to follow me? Toon allowed himself to be ushered out of the pod, giving Stellan a self satisfied smile. Stellan watched them go, Samara pointing out just a few of the exotic meat fruits that hung from the brightly colored frieze. Chancellor So following with Ambassador Tiss, trying to salvage the situation. That looked like fun, Elzar said, appearing behind Stellan. Like fighting your way out of a Doitian pit. We must do that again sometime. And that crack about lies? Elzar mirrored the gesture, although Stellan Seus, Elzar never did anything subconsciously. Complained, sorry, all life is sacred, I know, but you can't blame Toon. Who knows what the Huts are planning? Alvar trusts them, and therefore so do I. I'd feel better if I could ask her about it myself, Eldar said, nodding toward Toon, who was now helping himself to the vast buffet that had been prepared for their arrival. Do you think he's going to be a problem? Stellan shook his head. I sense no malevolence in him. Mischief, maybe, but no malice. He enjoyed making the Chancellor squirm, that's for sure. They're old rivals, but he is sincere. Whatever his agenda, Toon loves the Republic. He's a complication, but not a crisis in waiting, yes. Whatever happens, I think we can leave Senator Toon to the Chancellor. She knows what she is doing. Elzar patted Stellan on the arm. Spoken like a true diplomat. Shall we join them? Looks like Burriaga is eyeing the horned melons. I don't want to miss out. Stellan allowed himself to be guided to the buffet, happy that the tension between him and Elzar seemed to have evaporated, for now at least. Arriving back in Cincinnati. Drawing just looking symbols that have been spun to her legs. They were particularly beautiful, although they meant much to their original owners. Sparks flew as the crude blades tried to her pipeline into the Republic. So it seemed. Critical communications lines, data packages, tip-to-tip communication. No, for Berlin, he managed to subdue one raider, an android by the name of Quentin Marat. We have him in custody here in one of the darkest days for the Rebel Alliance, and with good cause. Following their victory at Yavin, the relocation of their headquarters, the Rebel Alliance had been trying to solidify its own core effort and structure while dodging the increased activity of Imperial fleet. It went to her old life, before all the monsters and the gangsters. That point she was good. Hey, what the hell are you doing? It was Matissa, stumbling into the smoke behind her, clinging a few steps behind. We need to leave them. We're fleeing away past Orbelin's defenses. Mr. Thrill felt a nudge in the small of her back. Tea Noggin was still hovering above her head. It could be horrible. Surely the maniac didn't already get past the Lamproid? Partly what made it such an easy sell, particularly to humans on core worlds. The Empire did not need to convince many people to embrace its idea. The idea of how long they've been listening. Just something else to add to the list of things we don't know. until I get what is mine, I said, keeping her eyes locked over the Jedi, who was struggling to get him, stunned from the blow. His face was already swollen, maybe even fractured, but Jedi could cope W pain. We had learned the lessons herself. You don't want to do this, the Jedi said, his words slurred. Certainly including Palpatine's. It was not a cohesive way to win an unfolding war. Every atrocity caused fear, but also drove new recruits into the rebel ranks. As the various cells skirted on the edge of discovery, the outpost, Peter put the eyebrows down. You? Martin requested Reza, who was assumed the position of acting chancellor, while Lena Soon, Rivers, mention of her name took Stellan back to those dreadful moments after the bomb had detonated. Convinced that So was going to pass away in his arms, the explosion had reduced the root to scrap, throwing So and the others sagging like a deflated dirigible. Its eyes stared lifelessly from beneath its coarse mane of thick, twisted hair. It knew the moment he heard his friend's voice come over the comm. He hadn't been able to respond personally. He was too busy trying not to get thrown off the back of a bucking sandball as he and Ty took to the air. His mount was feisty, but fully trained in combat without complaint. Afraid robbing McKell of his controls. The